This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
How you doing, guys? It's Mick Tully with Woma TV, and I'm with Shihan Gavin Mulholland. So, Gavin, first of all, thank you for talking to us. Now,
pleasure.
Is there any chance that you just quickly, we'll start at the beginning. How did you get into martial arts?
Okay, so it's an interesting question, and I don't have the full answer, to be honest, because my dad was in the military, and we're from Belfast. We're a Northern Irish family, 4 brothers, 1 sister, and he was teaching a sort of combination of judo and unarmed combat as a kind of military civilian crossover, because at the time this would be 60s, late 60s, early 70s in Northern Ireland, and of course everything's kicking off again over there. So this was quite interesting that he was doing this crossover thing, which was a kind of civilian military crossover, and it had Catholics and Protestants all training together. So that was quite a big deal. But so we all went there and watched, and we all trained from then. So I don't actually remember a time when I wasn't training, because I don't think I was ever given that option. So it all started from there, and then carried on.
First of all, when you got into karate and you trained, what is it that got you to Goju Ryu karate out of all of the karate styles?
So that was a bit of good fortune, as these things are. I don't know, maybe people these days do choose a system, but I don't think anyone chose a system back in the day, because there wasn't enough of it around to choose anything. You just went and did things. I didn't really know of a great deal of different systems. I don't think there was a great deal around. But what actually shifted me, because I was doing some judo at the time, and I'd sort of got a bit tired of that, really. I was still doing it, but I was disappointed in my dad, because he was a big judo fan. He loved it, and he took us sort of every weekend, of course, which you don't appreciate when you're a kid, but I do now. I'm the one having to charge people around. And I saw this demo. Now, it was a demo which had Kim Roberts and Dave Arnold in. Now, they were some of the original Goju people. I think Dave was in the British team, even with Bob Breen, back when Bob Breen was still doing karate and in the British team. And this demo, it was at a school fete or something, and I just happened to be there. And these guys got up to do karate, and it was loud, and they were shouting a lot. And then they did the bit on self-defense, where I think it was Kim went to hit Dave with a chair, and Dave wasn't looking or something, and Kim just broke the chair over him, and Dave just went mental, and they just had this big scrap in front of these kids. And so by then I guess I must have been about 17 at this stage, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I think it was on the Isle of Wight, but I spoke to Dave recently, and he doesn't think it was. So it was down south, and I thought that was fantastic. Now I didn't know this at the time, but Dave Arnold was teaching on the Isle of Wight, and Kim was teaching in Southampton, and I was living down on the coast then. We'd moved down there from Scotland. We left Ireland, went to Scotland. We were 5 years in Scotland, then down to England, and so I went up to Kim, who was the more dynamic of the two, and I went to speak to him to ask where he trains, how he joins, everything. I spoke to him, and he just looked at me up and down and turned his back and walked off. Right? He didn't answer me. He just walked, and I was a bit gobsmacked. And then Dave Arnold, who was the other half of their operation, said, "Don't mind him. He's a miserable git," or something, and spoke to me about it. But it was Kim that I was going to have to train with, and so I just followed up on that and went to Kim's club, and it was exactly what I wanted it to be. They were hard, they were frightening, he was distant, and he was brilliant.
You've been quoted as saying that you literally only started to have a conversation with him or get on conversational terms when you got to about a brown belt.
Yeah, right.
And you thought he didn't like you, or he's just trying to get you out. And then the distant thing is quite interesting that you said that, because I don't know if we watched too many movies, men of our generation, but the mentor figure that we wanted, we didn't want the father.
They don't talk to you, do they? No.
From there, what made you create DKK?
So DKK came about. So there was three of us at the time. So around 87, I think. I was an engineer at the time, and I had my own house and stuff, and I was 26, I think. So I was well on the path that people set themselves on. And I was lucky in that I got it that young, so I was able to realize this isn't it. Whereas most people, I think, are in their 40s before they get, a good job and a house, and then they know, holy fuck, this isn't it. There's more to life than this. I decided I was going to leave the country and go traveling, and I was a bit nervous about telling my mum and dad about this, because I had a good job, good house, and this was really a big moment for me, because when I told my dad and mum, they were just like, brilliant, yeah, great, off you go. Cool. And Dad said to me, he goes, yeah, that's not the last house you'll ever have, that's not the last job you'll ever have. He said, it's nice to look over the edge and see where you're going to land, son. He said, but sometimes you just have to jump and trust you're going to land, and you will. And so I'd left Kim's club by then. I was about second Dan by this stage, and I'd left and went and ended up in Japan and all that stuff. And I went away for 6 months and came back 2 years later, that sort of thing. And so I came back, and I had gone to university. So when I was at school, I didn't even know anyone that had been to university. Those people didn't exist, not from my school anyway. And so I had this view of people who are at university as these sort of, really mega brainy things. And what was interesting is when I was traveling, so I was in Australia actually, I remember when this happened, I met a bunch of English boys that were traveling. And I thought, but you're thick as shit. I think I could do that. So I actually applied from Australia to do a degree in England. And I didn't even, I wanted to do psychology, but that was only because I picked up a psychology book in a hostel where people leave books, when they're traveling on. And I read that because I'd read everything I possibly could, and still do. And so I spoke to my dad about it, and he was going to help. And I said, look, I want to do psychology, but I will study anything. I don't care what it is. I just want to study something to that depth. I only have one condition. Any university, any subject, just not London. And so you can't say that because the gods hear you, right? So I ended up in London, moving to London, and I've never left. But what happened was, so I went to university and I tried all the martial arts there, and I didn't like them very much. I think it's fair to say. And I remember the actual moment, and it was a Taekwondo club, and we're knuckle push-ups, but 4 inches off, right? And the instructor said this was invented by this Taekwondo master who'd got stuck on a cliff. He's climbing a cliff, but he got stuck on it, and he was there overnight. And so I thought, A, no, he didn't, and B, if he did, that's not the right exercise, is it? So I went to the students' union and said, look, can I start a karate club? And started with about 6 people showed up. And so that's how it is. So I sort of reluctantly started teaching. I didn't go to want to teach. I was going to train, but I didn't find anything that was going to be challenging enough. I've digressed a little bit. So at that time, Kim was associate, but Kim went abroad. He moved to France. And we did about a year or so with him in France. And then myself and Dan Lewis, who runs DKK with me, and a guy called Stuart, who's no longer involved, I wrote to Kim. I did the right thing. And it made a lot of difference because there's others of our ilk who didn't do the right thing. And I said to Kim, look, we're splitting. I'm setting up DKK. We're not going to license through you next year. I don't know how you're going to react to this. I said, but however you react to this, you're welcome in any dojo I ever run, and you're always welcome in my home. And I got a letter back from him, really very, very supportive, saying he'd always be there when I needed him. He's there, etc. So that's how DKK split. And I think what DKK was about evolved after it had begun. And it came about, really. It's all right for me to just keep rabbiting on. Is that?
Go.
Okay, so there was a couple of real key incidents. I might have even told you some of this previously, but there was a couple of real incidents that changed everything for me. One was a novel that I read, and this book changed everything for me. And what's most interesting is I don't know what the name of the book is. I don't know the author, and it's not it was a cheapo novel again that I'd just picked up somewhere. And the story arc of this book was there was an Irish priest in Italy. They're escaping over the Alps. A convict has kidnapped an Irish priest, and they're escaping over the mountains in an old banger car. And the convict hears the priest and he says, I don't believe in God. And the priest says, all right, tell me about this God you don't believe in. He goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, tell me about him. He goes, well, I don't believe in some old man with a big beard sitting on a cloud. And the priest said, all right, I don't believe in him either. And that changed. That was one of my light bulb moments in my life, because it comes down to everything. Everything comes back to that. Someone says, I don't believe in karate. Right, which bit doesn't work? The headbutt or the knee and the bollocks? What do you mean when you say it doesn't work? What doesn't work? Oh, well, you punch. Oh, right, I don't believe in that either. You've got to fight. So it did for me. You've got to define. If you're going to say something, you have to define it. I don't believe in God. Yeah. Which God? Which one? I don't believe in that one either. So that was kind of amazing for me. That was a big moment. The other one was when I was at university. And I had to write this big sort of treatise on Freud. And I'd put a lot into this. And I was called into the professor. And which is always great, because I one of the things you should do in life is surround yourself with people who are better than you are at everything. If you're the brightest one in the room, I can't remember who said it, you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I was going to see it, and he said, I've read this, Gavin. He said, did you read any Freud? I said, yeah, I did, yeah. He goes, right, did you read any Freud? I said, yeah, there's a bibliography at the back. There's about 12 books that I'd read, cover to cover. And he didn't look down, he just went, yeah, did you read any Freud? I'm like, and it dawned on what he meant, or what I'd done, is I'd read 12 books on Freud, and I had not read Freud. I'd read other people's opinions of it, and he said to me, always go to source. That's what DKK became, because the other thing struck me. So my main instructors have been Kim Roberts, Nick Hughes, and Steve Morris, right? And they're all exceptional. They're unbelievably good, violent men.
Whoop-ass. In the dictionary, under 3 examples of whoop-ass, it's you've got super size, Nick Hughes. Yeah. Then you've got Kim, and then you've got that's the only guy I know who still rocks, he can rock a man bun with the long hair. Yeah, Steve Morris. And you'd be like, oh, I'm not knocking this guy. Like, legends. Yeah. So carry on.
Absolutely. So it became clear. So I learned the same katas of all of them, and it's clear to me that they're not the same. They don't do it the same way. So there isn't one. So this professor told me to go to source. How do I do that? Because I've heard all this stuff. I've saw what Higaonna put out as bunkai, and I still don't believe he believes that stuff. I don't believe he believes it, but that's another story. So do we have, like a lot of Miyagi, Chojun Miyagi was the founder of Goju Ryu. Have we got his source? And we have, in the kata. And so DKK was an attempt to go back to source. So not just doing the kata, nobody was asking why those kata are in that order. Nobody ever asked why that kata is there. Why do we do it then? Why is it called this, right? Because some are called, like, one of the katas is called Sansaru, means 36. Well, you know, another one, you know, it's called Shisoshin, means, people will say it means battling in 4 directions, right? Utter nonsense. What do you mean? No, because you've got to just say, what do you mean 4 directions? Yeah. Well, they all go in 4 directions, and what if he comes from over there? It's just nonsense. And a kata, imagine putting one together back in those days. It's your soul, isn't it? It's your life. Yeah. You're not going to do that. Create this amazing thing that you think gives all the secrets you're trying to convey to future generations, and then call it Bob. Are you? You're not going to just, you're not going to give it some shitty little name that has no meaning, right? Yeah. So that started that investigation. Why is this called Gigzai-daichi? Why is it the first kata we teach? Then why is there a second one so similar that some Goju clubs have actually just got rid of it because it's only got one move different? But actually, when I got deeper and deeper and deeper, it's only got 2 moves the same, right? And that was it. So it's building from source. And I'll be honest, not rejecting what people have been teaching me, but not accepting that. I want to find out what this is all about. And the third piece was, someone said to me, you know, the founders, you can either look at them as if they're a genius or look at them as if they're an idiot. And either way, that's what you're going to find. And it's true. So I took the view, NLP does this, you sort of, neuro-linguistic programming does the thing where you don't necessarily believe something, but you act as if you do. Yeah. And it changes your perception on things. So I accept that Miyagi is the genius. And therefore, why do? And it can't be just a little bit of a genius. It can't have, this is brilliant, but he's got Nikuash, this weird little bendy stance, which is shit. So I'm not going to do that. You can't do that. It means you have to find out what he meant. And I'll be honest, I do believe that Miyagi would come and see DKK and say, this is great. But it wouldn't look what he did. And I believe that if it did look like what he did, it was, what the fuck have you been doing for 100 years? I did that. No.
Well, it's so funny you said that, because we're both from the generation where principle-based training, like it was like you were heretic when so you're not going to follow the kata. And I remember I used to say this to my karate instructor, my first karate instructor, and I love him like a father, Andy Margaret, and he'd do bunkai. And I used to say, but you're doing a square peg in a round hole here. And he was like, what? And I said, you're trying to make what we do in fresh air, like, which looks cool, against somebody who doesn't want that to happen. And I went, if we just look at the principle, but you've got to remember, this is back in the late 80s. And like, I'm a first stand. He's like, so who do you think you are, mate? You're like, you like Bruce Lee now? And I said, no, I'm looking at it, and it doesn't look like there's any progression here. And then it was like, what do you mean progression? Original's still good. And I went, original is good, but the Model T is nowhere near as good as that Sierra Sapphire Cosworth I've just bought. You know what I mean? And it like the principles, as you were saying, when me and you first talked about it, you blew my mind, and I'm gonna freak you out over this. Because when we talked about when you moved into MMA, which I'm going to have to assume that anyone who's watching this knows, but I am going to just quickly give this, like, preface it with this. I truly believe, especially in the UK, you are the only guy I have ever seen take a so-called traditional martial art and put it into not just, by the way, not just in MMA, because I know you've done it for real as well. You've taken the martial art and put it at the highest level. Like I'm referring to your MMA and how you did it. And I remember when we talked about it, and I was like, so do you do much groundwork? And you just turned around to me like, and it was so straight the way you said it. You went, yeah, it's all in Goju. And I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't look like any of the karate I did. And you went, no, it's all there, Mick. It's all there. And I was like, and I went back, and I won't lie to you, you screwed my head up, because I was like that going, have I walked away from karate too early here? Because like that's what I want to get you on. It's like, how did you manage to get something that was a square peg round hole scenario, which would be say Goju, right? Yeah. And how did you get it to go into, which is now the biggest, fastest growing sport in the world? And bear in mind, I should say, you were the first guy and the only guy that I really believe that we saw that switch from a martial art to now mixed martial artists, because we don't see it anymore. And I know you posted recently, you got bored of watching mixed martial arts. Yeah. So that's the reason why I'm asking this. How did you get Goju Ryu Karate? I know that's a big, long-winded thing, but I had to preface it. How did you get Goju Ryu Karate into the cage and win?
Okay, so I'm going to link those two things for you, because first I want to go back to what a kata is, and the big misunderstanding which pervades to this day. A kata is, it's like a lecture. Again, I'll go back to uni, because I learned so much about karate at university while not doing karate. It was the only thing that really took out of it. Kata is like a university, a lecture, right? Doesn't tell you what you need to know. It tells you what you need to be studying. And so does a kata. So if you take Goju Ryu, I only know Goju. I don't speak for karate. I don't know. I'm sure I'd find the same stuff if I looked in them, but I don't know it. Goju Ryu starts with Gegazai Daiichi, which means attack and smash number 1. And then it goes Gegazai Daini, same name, number 2. Then Cypher, then Seiunchin. So Cypher means tear and smash, and Seiunchin means trapping battle, and then your black belt. So I will come back to your question, and this does link into it, because it's as if you came to me, Mick, and said, Gavin, listen, with no skills whatsoever, said, Gavin, I've really fucked up. What's the matter, Mick? I've got to have a fight in the docks on Wednesday. And I'm like, it's Sunday night, Mick. Yeah. So what could I teach you? Okay. What could I teach you in those couple of days? And it's not a wrist lock, is it? It's not even a punch. What I have to teach you is that when the bell goes, you're straight over and you smash, you just fight with what God gave you. Tooth and claw. I've got no time to give you skills. That's Gegazai Daiichi. That is attack and smash number 1. So when students are when they're learning Gegazai Daiichi, they're doing push-ups till they can't do anymore. They're doing punches on bag till they can't do anymore. Not skillful ones. They're doing hill sprints. That is Gegazai Daiichi. Then Gegazai Daini, the next kata, that is still attack and smash, but some positional advantage. Before you attack and smash them, you move. Whereas before, it's just straight down the pipe. So boxing is Gegazai Daini. Cypher means tearing. So the fight has come closer and someone's now grabbed you and you want to get away from them to put the fight back in the stand-up. Now, if you take the cage as an example, all the stand-up fighters, who I still maintain where you had in those early days, first-rate grapplers versus third-rate strikers, okay, on a slippery map, but we'll come back to that.
Always.
And it was Chuck Liddell that figured it out, because what happened was, say you and I fought, so you've got 5 years grappling, I've got 5 years stand-up, we fight, you win. So I think, shit, I'm going to go and do 6 months grappling. So I come back 6 months later and we fight again. I've got 6 months grappling, you've got 5 years, 6 months grappling, and I lose again. It's not going to win, right? That isn't going to work. And it's Chuck Liddell that figured it out to frustrate grapplers, not to try and grapple, but to frustrate them and then knock them out. That's Cypher, getting out of grabs and holds. Now the kata with the bunkai gives you a few examples. But you're supposed to be studying getting out of grabs and holds for a year, 2 years. That's Cypher. That is that phase of training. And then your last kata before black belt is called Seiunchin, trapping battle. What else can it be? It's grappling. Trapping battle, what else can it be? and it's grappling. And then you spend your brown belts learning to grapple. So by the time you get to black belt, you've got a basic understanding, no more than that, in all the areas of fight. There isn't any other range. There's nowhere else to fight. Anyway, so to your question, Neil Grove, a showdown of mine, black belt, a big guy, he wanted to test it. He wanted to go in the cage. And we'd been talking to Cage Rage at the time. There was a thing called Cage Rage Contenders. And that was where you get a sort of, we had a couple of fights in the cage, just to see how it went. And Neil was knocking people out. But then he was doing that that's how I met him, actually. I got a call from this nightclub where he was working saying, can you come and have a look at our door crew? We've got people knocking too many people out. And he just knocked out his supervisor. And I went down there and it was Neil. And then he ends up training. But yeah, so we've been thinking it. Then I get a call from Neil on a Thursday night saying, I've just had a call from Dave O'Donnell and he wants me to fight at Wembley on Saturday against James Thompson. Remember the Pride fighter?
Yeah, Colossus, yeah. No, well.
Yeah, Colossus. So Neil's had a couple of fights, but we haven't even got on Contenders yet. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. And he paused, he goes, I want to do it. I said, look, Colossus has been training for this fight. He was supposed to fight Chemo, I think.
Yeah, Chemo Leopoldo. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And obviously it's too late. They've sold the tickets. They don't want to just have no fight. So they've got this big guy. Neil was just meat so that they don't cancel the fight, right? So I said, no, you shouldn't do it. And Neil says, I really want to do it. And I said, all right, we'll do it. So actually I was away. I wasn't even going to be there. We were in a rehearsal. You'd mentioned music. I'm in a band with my brothers, Irish band. I was down in Southampton rehearsing for a gig next time. And Gary just said, just take my car and go. So I jumped into Gary's car, bombed up the M3 and got to Wembley at about 6:30. And Neil's all getting ready and bowled in. And I said, right, what are we doing? And Neil said, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tire him out and take him in the second round. I said, no, you're not. I said, absolutely you're not. He's been training for 3 months. What's wrong with you? This is gigs I die itch. This is my words. You're going over that cage like he stole your baby. Okay? And if you watch the fight, and Neil knocked him out in 10 seconds. They had to bring oxygen into the cage. Neil storms over there. Doesn't look like there's skill going on, but, the guy is unconscious after 10 seconds. So, you make your own luck, so to speak. And that was it. That was Neil won that fight in 10 seconds. And then we had other guys that wanted to fight in there. And we just, I think our first 20 professional fights, we had 16 wins, most by knockout. And they never announced us as karate. They always, even from that first fight, announced us as background in MMA, even though we'd have gi tops and belts on.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because after that, I don't know, did you ever watch any of James Thompson's fights after that?
Yeah.
Because in Japan he was known as Gong and Rush, because in the Pride fights he did exactly what Neil Grove did to him. As soon as the gong went, he just rushed and tried to take him out. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Yeah. It was one of those. Well, anyway, as you were saying, you were never ever mentioned as DKK. You were never mentioned as karate. It was just like you were lumped in as MMA. Now, you don't just have a black belt. You get the black gi, right? When you get your
right. Yeah.
Now, famously, Mazoyama, the 100-man kumite. Yeah, you heard about it, and I've seen a few times. I've heard versions of it.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the person who told me about your 30-man kumite was the late great, often lamented Tony Pillage, who was quite well known to hyperbole, and he would exaggerate sometimes. I saw it and I said, what was it like? And he goes, Mick, it was a fucking massacre. And I went, what? And he goes, he said, trust me. He goes, it's 30 people, and he goes, and it's a fresh person every minute. So, and most of these guys that are doing it, they're grading 2. So if they don't put it on, whoever's doing the 30-man commentary. And I'm like, what? And he was telling me, and I'm like, for my first stand, I fought everyone in the room. So I had pretty much the same thing, but it wasn't a lineup. It was completely different. So how did you come up with that concept or that idea to do a 30-man kumite?
So it wasn't actually mine. So it goes back to the investigation of the system and wanting to understand everything in the system. And one of the other things that is a big problem in karate and why people aren't doing it anymore, quite rightly, is you're told that a shodan is a beginner's grade, right?
Yeah.
Which is, otherwise it'd be called ichidan, ich ni-san, right? But sho means beginner. It's called beginner's grade. That's its name.
Yeah.
Right? And so the big problem is shodans leaving their associations, starting their own clubs without knowing. Because you said, did you leave too early? You might not have done, but they did, and they became teachers. Yeah. Each Dan grade is supposed to have its own area of study. It's not, so you're not supposed to just do it again when you're older and fatter. It doesn't. That makes no sense. Right. A fourth Dan isn't supposed to just be a slow, fat first Dan. They're supposed to have studied other things and have different levels of skills. So with Goju, Shodan is a generalist grade. It shows you everything you've done. Then your Nidan is a fighting grade, which is where our 30-man comes, and I'll come back to it. Sandan is really about understanding the kata and the bonkai and how the system puts together, because then you're a teacher level. Weapons grade is 4th Dan, 5th Dan, pulls everything together. So Nidan always was a fighting grade, and it came out of, it always was a fighting grade. We did a fighting grade, but it wasn't formalized as such. And it's really about it's okay, the press always loves it when a black belt gets beaten up in a car park, don't they? Because they just perpetuate the myth that a black belt's a master, right? So that's a beginner just got beaten up. But your high grade should be tough. I don't care what you do, but your karate black belt should be able to fight and fight well. Yeah. So you can get to Shodan as a sort of technician, but you can't be beyond. With the 30-man, it means that to get beyond, to do the nice soft stuff that people want, the Ju of Goju, yeah, great. Yeah, do your 30-man. It's all there waiting for you. All that lovely stuff, all your chi, all your pressure point stuff, it's all waiting for you. But you have to be able to fight first. And this is to come back to Pillage, and I said this to him because he found himself a nice little niche on pressure points and stuff. And I said to him, because he did know them, says, the problem you got, Tony, is you've got no delivery mechanism. You can't get anywhere near me. You couldn't get anywhere near me to deliver any of that, which he knew, because he hadn't done the hard stuff first, the go before the Jew, because you need that delivery mechanism, which he understood, because he talked about the poison on the spear. He just did, you got to have a spear before, you've got to have a spear, right? And you've got to be able to use it. So Nidan is there to ensure that our high grades are tough. So it was always a fighting grade, but it was actually Nick Hughes that had in his system a 30-man kumite. And so that's really where the idea of formalizing it, because we just fought, we kept fighting over and over and over and over. But then when I did mine and all that stuff, we didn't know what the syllabus was at all. We didn't even know we were grading, which allows some level of fear, but very momentary. The way we do this is you're told exactly what to do. So, red belt, first thing you're going to do is second thing you're going to do is 10 push-ups. First thing you do is pay. And I make this very clear. So if you can't do your 10 push-ups, you're out. Yellow belt is 20 push-ups, orange belt 30, 40. So your first thing you do with your black belt is 100 push-ups. So because you do get quite close to your students, or at least you like some of them. Not a lot, but you like them. So I don't want to be failing them arbitrarily. I want to say, well, you couldn't do your push-up, so how dare you turn up here unprepared? I've told you exactly what you had to do. You're taking a piss. Why are you even here? Whereas we didn't know that. We had an excuse. We didn't know we were going to have to do that. So I think it's much tougher to know what you have to do. With the 30-man, they spend basically a year training for it. And people have done interesting things to get ready. A lot when they go to Kyokushin, we've had some help from the Kyokushin who come in and help, and some go to Thai boxing. There was one guy who did stand-up comedy. I think I've mentioned this to you before.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
And I'm like,
what? That's the thing he was scared of, yeah.
Yeah, that was his greatest fear. And when he did it, went and did it, and he's not a funny guy, which is funny in itself. He worked out what his most frightening thing was, and we had a couple of guys do door work who are not particularly suitable, but they do a year of door work, all mental preparation for this test. So when you walk onto the field of truth, which is our field, and you see 30 people lined up, 30 people looks a lot more than the number. It's a big line. And then when 15 of those are in black gis as well, meaning they've done it, it's a terrifying thing. And he's right, it's not unusual to have people who are, I say audience, people sitting around that are watching it in proper tears, just weeping.
And then I looked at your grading syllabus, and it was like, oh yeah, to get your black belt, you got to do 6 months on the door. And I went, what? And then, like, can you expand on that? 6 months on the door for a black belt?
Yeah, we don't actually do that anymore. We don't actually do that anymore. That was in the early days of DKK. That's what we did, and again, it's about being tough. And the reason we dropped it as a requirement is that I had some very tough people that just didn't need or want to do that, and it was important to me that people put themselves on the line. But I don't know how, as we got bigger, it just got unmanageable. We got too big to have that many people out there doing it. But it set us off on the right foot, and in principle, I still really think it's an important thing. And because the important thing about doorway, it's like troops in Northern Ireland. You don't have to actually see combat for it to harden you. The fear of it goes a long way. And I say this to my own guys, that there should be fear in a dojo. And one of the things that's tripped over from BJJ, apart from calling stuff that we used to have different names for, the mount and the guard, is this little hand-shaped fist pump there. I just won't have it, because it's a way of bringing it down. It's a way of saying, okay, we're just messing, we're just rolling. Okay, when this isn't a fight. That's so different from someone going and squaring off to you, because that's what the bow is, a bookend, right? What I'm saying, when we bow before we fight, I'm saying that whatever happens between this bow and the next one stays between those two bows. We might be friends now, and we might be friends on the other side, but not now. Between these two bows, we're fighting. And it doesn't move beyond this space. That's what it's to. So don't go fist bumping. It's like when they're sparring, they're encouraging the guy who's sparring them. Stop that immediately, just shut up. Like the 30 man. The last thing I want is someone fighting them and saying, yeah, come on. You're supposed to be scaring the living shit. You're supposed to be terrifying them. Everyone in the dojo, and I've said this before, you should have times when you just can't come, because you just can't face it, because your courage fails you, and you think, I just can't go in there. I've got to go. I could be home. Yeah. Not all the time. That would be too much. But that fear has to be present. Otherwise, you can't meld people. You can't. The dojo's not hot enough. The metal won't melt, right?
Famously, you don't advertise. You don't teach children, right? So literally, if we talk about expanding an organization, you do literally everything that these martial arts mastery, life coaches, guys with their headsets, they've got their teeth done in Turkey, tell you we're going to change your life, right? And you do completely the opposite, and you've got a huge organization. Is it just down to the fact that people want quality, or authenticity, or what is it?
A couple of things, really. You did mention traditional. You said traditional a little bit back there, and I was going to pick it up then. But the traditional is the tradition of being effective. That's what's traditional, isn't it? Nothing was traditional apart from being effective. So as I said, was a reluctant teacher in the first place. I have no desire for an empire in this whatsoever. I still am old school, and I think that I shouldn't be out there asking for students. I think they should find me. And on our form, it says, one of the lines there is, why should I accept you as a student? And it always flummoxes people entirely. Why should, because they're expecting to do all the rest. Why should I accept you as a student? And the answers are always sort of a bit of nonsense, really, but it's just to get them to think, to put them in the right space to start with, as to why you think I should teach you. And I don't really, and I say you touched on this a little bit yourself earlier. When a new student does come in, I am much more friendly than Kim ever was. But I do say, okay, I'm not going to spend any time with you. Line up at the back, do what everyone else does. And if you're still here in 3 months, we'll talk. And I say to them, you've got nothing to prove to me. Yeah, you will have, but not now. You'll wait until you do, and that's it. Off you go. And it's funny. I get quite a lot of karate and other instructors, not just karate, telling me that, you know, it used to be so much harder, and you know, you can't do it that way anymore. And I'm like, why not? And they said, well, you just can't get the students. I said, well, I've got like 10 times more students than you, and I'm doing it hard. You know, it's hard because it's what people want, right? No, who ever wanted it to be? I mean, people call it elitist now, but elitist is it's like socialism in America. How did that become a bad word? You know, how did that become a negative term?
Yeah,
it's not.
Exactly.
I'm not elitist. Karate is open to everyone, but not everyone can achieve it because not everyone's willing to give what it takes. So I really have just maintained, and I don't. You'll never hear me saying we had it tough for our day. You could get Scotty to beam any of my black belts back into my day, and they would still be doing exactly what we did, if not better.
Authenticity, as I said, it's funny because every time I speak to anyone about you, and your name comes up, they go, "He's a real deal," you know. And it's funny because, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. Karate has a really, really bad rap now, and it kills me. Because I'll tell you right now, and I maintain this. I'd put stand up. I would put Wayne Otto or Vic Charles at their peak in that arena against anyone, right? But on the streets, I would put Steve Morris or Peter Urban. If we just use two Goju guys, you know, I put them up against anybody. So, you know, pardon my French, but what the fuck happened? Was it just everything got diluted? And because
it's an interesting point, and I used to sort of struggle with it with, you know, some of the sort of McDojo stuff. It used to annoy me, and it doesn't ignore me, and it doesn't anymore at all because, you know, the bell curve, the bell distribution curve. Yeah, are you familiar with that? So that basically says that, you know, there's this curve. You're going to have a few people that are really good, few people that are really shit, and everyone else is average. That's true of everything, right? That's true of everything. So it's always been this way. You know, it's always been mostly rubbish. Almost all of everything is a bit rubbish. And this is why you'll never hear me or see me posting up videos of someone or some group that's rubbish. You know, doesn't mean I don't think they're rubbish, but, you know, like I said, you know, Liverpool don't spend their time trawling the internet to find, you know, little clips of Sunday league footballers putting it up on their site saying, look at these guys, that's not even football. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to me what they're doing. But the reason it got rubbish was Shodan's teaching. If I had set up as a Shodan, I probably would have dropped Nick Lash. I don't know if you know the stance, but there's some stances.
Yeah,
might
yeah,
not
the
be
cat
done.
stance, yeah.
Yeah, I probably would have dropped it because I didn't understand what it was for. You know, I couldn't see that, but now I totally understand what it's for. It's utterly essential. But there's loads of stuff I didn't understand. And so what you've got is those Shodan who broke away getting up through the grades, but they've still got Shodan level. And it comes back to what I said, you know, you're supposed to have a different understanding of things at Nidan, not just be doing the same stuff, because you can't do it as well. You know, if you think about sort of your route to black belt and trying to go power, I want to be able to knock you out, right? Because if I can knock you out, I don't even have to be the best fighter. I just need to get to you. If I can take a bit of a hit, this is Goju Heartlands, right? If I can take a bit of a hit, I just need to get to you. I don't even have to be a better fighter than you. I know I can knock you out, right? That's where confidence comes from, not teaching confidence. Yeah. Give people power. Then post black belt, what I want to see then is how little can I do to knock you out? I'm not just trying to get power exponentially. I've got it. How little now? What little amount can I do to knock you out? So again, so you're not doing the same thing. You're not just trying to get more powerful at 60 than you were at 20. It just makes no sense. And so karate has got a very bad rep for good reason. But the real answer to your question in my book is karate doesn't exist. Okay, there is no such thing. There is nothing that you can tell me that is definitely karate. That doesn't exist in other styles. There is nothing. What does exist is Goju exists, Shotokan exists. Okay, but karate doesn't exist. You said earlier about you used to do karate and you still sort of do. In my book, you absolutely do. You are doing empty hand. Karate, empty hand is an umbrella term which incorporates jiu-jitsu, MMA, judo. All of that stuff is, to my book, is karate. It's empty-handed training. That's what it is. And then beneath that, you've got the delineation of what it is. A style, right? Goju is the only thing a style is a difference of opinion on how to do the same thing. So when we went into the cage, people were saying that doesn't look like karate. They said, well, what do you mean? What were you expecting to see? You expect to see our training mechanisms, like kata. That's a training mechanism. Gyakuski, there's karate punch, this bomb. That's not a punch. You know, the conversation about, because don't forget the Japanese had boxing back in the day, and they had fights. They know what fights were. So somebody said, right, what we're going to do is we're going to take out all these punches that we know work, and put this one in and argue for 100 years about whether it works or not. That conversation never happens, right? So this concept of pulling back here. This thing, and if I just push it, if I'm going, that's a push, okay? I have to get that mitetic reflex, the stretch reflex, boom, that is what we're trying, that's what this is training. The end bit of fist is not, it's that, boom, that's what we're training. And by that, you're training your trigger. So a punch has got 3 phases, right? Trigger, free flight, and impact. Free flight, you need to hit something. Your body won't allow you to punch in the air and not do it, it won't allow you to damage. So it trains the trigger, and then the impact's done on Makawara pads and people. But what you're really trying is this boom, this trigger, and then that is all of your punches. The trigger for all of your punches, not just this one. It's a shortcut, right? So there's one example where you've got people going on thinking that's a punch. So karate doesn't exist. There's no such thing. And when people said that doesn't look like karate, what they wanted to see was our training mechanism. But what they actually saw was the result of our training mechanism. The fight will always look the same.
In order of word association, if I was going to mention you, right? Firstly, I would say just the diamonds, because you've always been great whenever we've met up, right? But these are the things that I immediately think of you. First of all, karate. Secondly, whiskey. Then shillelaghs. Then music, right? Like I'm going to let the guys into a little bit of a secret. The last time I actually rang you was just before lockdown. Do you remember? I had a free ticket.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Murphy's.
Yeah.
But it was like in typical Mick Tully style. Eddie Quinn had rang me and he goes, "Mate, I can't go to see the Dropkick Murphys. It's down at Ali Pally. Do you know anyone who's going to be up for it?" I went, "The only person I know down that neck is Gavin Mulholland. He'll be up for it." I rang me out and you couldn't make it. But right. it was bizarre because I wouldn't have known anything about, especially your musical skills, again, through Pillage. Because first of all, finding out that you're in a band. And then secondly, when you sang the part in Glass, and you remember, and you turned around to me, like you walked away. And do you remember, because you were quite emotional, it was at his funeral. Yeah. And you went, "I don't even know why I did that." And it was really good because it was a proper moment. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So tell me.
Yeah, I don't remember that conversation. No, I do remember doing the song though. Yeah.
Yeah, but when we came out of it, you were like that guy. I don't know why I did that. But you were like, it was one of those moments. How did you? So music, is it the Irish thing or what?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we left Ireland and went to Scotland for 5 years in Scotland and moved down to England. So I don't know what I was, 10, 11, something like that. But we didn't have a TV until we got to England. But there was instruments everywhere, just laying around. So we all kind of played everything. So I say it's a band, but it's my brothers. We just play it. And we didn't even have a proper name for a long time. We used to play under a different name every time we played. And we're called the Watch Snatchers.
Yeah.
And that came about, that came about. I remember we had one name we played under was something like Flattery Slattery and his 12-piece orchestra that John had just come up with. And then there's 4 of us, and they were quite upset by it. But we were playing this one gig up in Derbyshire, I think it was. And just before we started, Mike snapped a string on his mandolin. So he goes, right, tell a joke. Oh. So I said, what's the difference between a pickpocket and a peeping Tom? One of them snatches watches. And the next day in the Derbyshire Times, they called us the watch snatchers, and it stuck. Right. So we just kept it. So the watch snatchers, that's how that came about. So yeah, we play a fair bit. We played a couple of gigs up in Sheffield last weekend, a couple of down Southampton, and one before. Yeah, we play a bit, but it's not, we don't take it too seriously. It's drinking music. It's what it is, mate. What it is, and this is another little bit of a gift, I think, because of the type of music it is. It's for people who have had a bit of a hard time, or they've had a shitty week, and all their troubles, it's a bit like training. All your troubles are still going to be there when we finish, but for 2 hours we can lift that. We can lift that off them for a couple of hours, and they're going to bang their feet and drink more than they thought they were going to, and so are we. And that's just brilliant.
Well, you see, this is the thing that I don't know about yourself, but as I've got older, my appreciation of, and I'm not working for the Irish Tourist Board here, but there's certain things like, again, I have to quote you on this. I mentioned to you that I'd started drinking whiskey, and you were like, "How old are you?" And I don't know if you remember this. How old are you? And I said, 51. He goes, "Yeah, about right." He goes, "Can't remember, it's a man's drink." And it was so funny the way you said it, because you're like, "No, you wouldn't appreciate it. You won't appreciate it as a young man." And then it was that whole thing where it's like, "Yeah, it's a sipper," and it was like, "What?" And you were like, "Got to appreciate it." If you go through the Facebook, because we were chatting on Facebook, and I said it, and you went, "No," he goes, "because you can't gulp that down." He goes, "You put Coke in it, what are you, a Philistine?" And it was really good. It was like, no, you sit there and you've got to gather your thoughts, and it's a drink that makes you think, and it makes you think some mad things as well if you're Irish or Catholic. But with the KD music, especially what I found as I've got older, KD music and country music, again, it's that. Make me sound like an old fart here now, but it's like, when you start reading Hemingway and you go, "Yeah, I get you now, Ernie. I get where you're coming from." Like you listen to Johnny Cash and you're like,
yeah, but it's a good thing. Life it's just brilliantly designed, right? So when you're 20, you want to go to clubs and stuff, and then when you're our age, you can't think of anything worse. It's not that you still want to go and don't, right? It's you want to do something else, and what they always forget is that you've already done it, right? And so if pop music really is teenage music, the only love they talk about is male, female, teenage love, and rightfully so. But country music and Irish music, they talk about life. They talk about you losing the farm. They talk about you losing your job. They talk about your struggles in life. They talk about your love for your children or your love for your parents, not just male, female love. That's why it's you need to be older to appreciate it, because you need to have done those things, and it can only be written and sung by people that have done it, which is why Johnny Cash and the like are just kind of, you can feel it. You couldn't get a teenager singing that stuff, right? And that's the beauty of an Irish band like ours, is the older and more craggy you are, the better, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it's the truth. Again, it's like, just as he's saying it, I'm like, I remember seeing Van Morrison back in the 90s, and he was curmudgeonly then, and he pissed me off. But now I'm like that, going, I get this. He'll turn up and go, "I'm getting 950,000 to be here tonight, but I'd rather be at home watching Only Fools and Horses." You know what I mean? And it's like Christy Moore's another great example.
Yeah.
Again, when you listen to these guys, you go, and again, just as he's saying it, and you were saying about the music and I think that's in like literally every culture. It's where we used to venerate the elders, now we don't. It's like, you're sitting around and you're just listening to guys telling you stories, and then you go, "Why is he saying that?" You go, "Well, so that you don't have to live that life."
Right, right. That's what folk music. Again, folk music got a bad name because of English folk, which is just dire, but Irish folks, great. But that's what it is, you know. And so this is all kind of, that's all basically whiskies there, all different sorts that people have got, and just, you know, it's an appreciation of something. It takes time to become like that. Yeah. I was up in Scotland a couple of years ago, and we went to the Glenfiddich place, and what I didn't realise was, you know, age is 10 years, 20, 30, 40. The reason it only gets to a certain age, like 30 or something, is because there's none left. It's because it evaporates, and not because they drink it, but it evaporates from the barrel. So there's only so much you can get out of a barrel at 30 years. 60 years, there isn't going to be any left. So there isn't a 60-year-old whiskey. And just that, I remember once sitting by the pyramids in Egypt, looking at them, just thinking, everything I've ever done, everything my dad did, everything his dad did, everything I've ever read about, everything that's in the Bible, everything that's ever been written, these things were sitting there. And that was brilliant. And I think a little bit of that with the whiskey, you know, you pick that up, and this was put in the barrel before I was born, or when I was here, when I was there. And that goes into the drop you pour on the ground, because you put one on for your ancestors.
Yeah, well, you see, that again, it's that thing that got me, because I was looking at it going, just the level of patience, which again, it ties in really nicely to martial arts, which is, you know, just seeing that, you've got this great collection of whiskies behind you, right? And in your 20s, all you needed was a bad week, and go in there, demolish one or two of them, like, you know, ruin your whole week. And now you're looking at it, and you've got the respect for it there, and you've got the patience, because you know you've got it.
And it goes back to that sentiment what I was saying about surround yourself by people that know better than you do, because nobody in the history of the world has picked up a whiskey and thought, this is lovely, first time, or a beer for that matter, you know. But there's people better than me that say, this is great stuff, so I'm going to persist with it until eventually think, this is great, you know. And I'll do that with anything. That enough people think this is great. I want some of that. If someone says this is brilliant, whatever it is, me saying no it isn't doesn't enhance me in any way. What I need to do is get to where they are and think, do you know what, that is brilliant? Or eventually say, no, it's not. But it's never a wasted journey, right?
Well, it's exactly right. Because you're thinking, and I'm sure it's another great Karateka whiskey aficionado, Steve Lowe, right? And you know, Steve's a great bloke, and he's works on a building site, carpenter. Yeah, like he teaches karate, and he's like, oh, why don't you do it for a living? And he's like you, if I did it for a living, I might fall out of love with it. I don't ever want to find that out. And we were talking about whiskey, and I said to him, I went, man, I went over to, when I was over in Osaka, I had a couple of Suntories over there. And I won't lie to you, what I did initially was I just went pure Japanese businessman, fired a load of beer down my neck, went to a karaoke bar, and then I saw an advert for a highball, and I went, while I'm here, I've got to try one. Had one, and it was really nice because it was a highball. And then I went into an Irish bar, and the guy who owned it was one of the typical Japanese Irish bar, by the way, on the 7th floor of a skyscraper. When you walked in there, and it was like walking in off O'Connell Street, you know what I mean? And walked in, and of course all the Americans were like, don't worry, we've got our own Irish guy there. But the thing was, I'd only buried my dad 2 days previously, right? And I went in, and they were like, what are you here for? And I said, oh, martial arts thing, where you're from, County Cavan, and asked about my parents. And I said, well, actually, we just like had my dad's funeral 2 days ago. And it was so funny because the bloke, I'd only met him like, 20 minutes earlier. He went, how many of your mates with you? And I went, well, that's quite a lot. It's about 30 of us. And he went, how many of them do you really, really like? And I went, I like. He goes, you've got to pick another 9. And I went, okay. And he goes, but don't bring any Philistines. That was his exact words. Don't bring any Philistines. Meet me at the bottom of the bar. Went down to the bottom of the bar, and he pulled out. And bear in mind, to us, it's just manufactured. But it's such a great story because my dad, his name was Paddy, and his favourite whiskey was Paddy whiskey. And as we rock up, go to the end of the bar, he pulls out a bottle of Paddy whiskey, and he goes, the problem is, he goes, this is about £30 a shot over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the bar, he said, what was your dad's name? And I went, Paddy. And then as he was going out, he goes, where's he from? And I went, County Cavan. And he went, we're drinking Paddy whiskey for a mean bastard from Cavan. And we threw it down the neck. But it was really bizarre because it was one of those moments where I looked at it and I was like, my dad would be so stoked to know like 15,000 miles away in a country that he doesn't even really understand, but they're toasting him. And the guy was like, and how do you feel? And I was like, you know, again, it was one of those, as you get older, I'd never lost anyone close to me. And then obviously I lost my dad. And we had a problematic relationship, but it was, you know, without getting too heavy, you know, it's like you view your relationship with your parents through the lens of your own children and that. It's only when you become a father that you look and go, he must have looked at me like this at least once in his life. And then you become the forgiving individual, you know what I mean? But it was but it was great because the reason I said that whole story was how shit would that story have been if I said, yeah, I went there and he got 10 bottles of Budweiser out for us. You know
yeah,
what
right.
I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be like the worst story ever.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up with this. If you had anything, right, if there was any other martial art that you could have done, what would it have been?
That's interesting. That is an interesting question. So I do have a love for judo. I love the honesty of judo. I love the fact they never got into the self-defense bullshit. They talk about themselves as judo players, and they're tougher than the rest of us, generally speaking. It's just, or it was. BJJ, you know, people say basically just judo got taken out by the Olympics, right? And it created this vacuum, and BJJ rushed in to fill it, quite rightly. And I guess if I was starting now, I might be doing that. I think, I don't know of anything as complete as Goju. And I think I might be doing two things, but I heartily disagree with.
That was good. Mick he said he's trying to get in. Is
that all right, Will?
Excellent. Just trying to get Mick. There he is. Cool.
Okay.
Superb. I wish we could keep on going or come back and do some more. Because this is for me what I like about martial arts. Proper martial arts. Nice.
We're back in. Well,
we are back in. Yes.
So we'll just go from Goju. If you just say Goju, and then we'll be able to go from there, all right?
Okay. Yeah. So Goju. So it's sort of changed for me over the year. When there was an article I had published, I think, in Combat magazine, if you remember Combat. It was the first one I wrote, maybe 30 years ago, and it was basically saying karate is all about fighting. It's not about anything else. And I don't agree with that anymore. But I'm not ashamed of the article because that's what it meant to me then. It was my truth at the time as a second Dan. That was my truth. So now I think I know it's about a lot more than that. So if I was to do something else, if it's about fighting, it needs to be stand up. You know, it needs to be stand up. I think I probably would do BJJ now later on. I like the concept of tapping out. You know, you can't tap out of a thigh kick. It's too late. You know, you can't tap out from a punch in the head. And so the pace of that is kind of good. Some of the kung fu's are interesting, but they've gone too flowery. You know, some of the Okinawan stuff is interesting, but it's too clunky. It's a hard one, you know, and I don't really think I speak from a position of great knowledge as to what I'd be doing because I don't know. You know, I can only speak as a Goju guy. And interestingly, I don't even consider myself a Goju guy. I do say to my students, if I saw something better, I would be in here tomorrow saying, I'm doing this. You can come with me or not. I would drop it in a heartbeat if I saw something better. Absolutely, 100%.
But you see, it's funny you say that because That's why I follow Dan Inosanto, for the simple reason he's so open-minded, and it was like the classic. Like you go. Believe it or not, if you go on the internet now, you'll find guys arguing about Jeet Kune Do and say, "What did Bruce really think?" And you're like, he was a 32-year-old man. Like, this is coming from a 53-year-old man. Most 32-year-old men that I know, I don't want to spend more than 10 minutes with them anyway. You know what I mean? Because they just haven't woke up yet. You know what I mean? But it's again that with Guru Dan, it's like, do it.
See, I think that's a good point, actually. I don't know. I think that's what I would do. If I could do it with my knowledge now, I would follow a person, not a style. It would be a person I train with. And I don't think you can get better than...
Yeah, but unfortunately, Gavin, one that we're going to have to expand on for the simple reason that, Bob Breen, Rick Young, Terry Barnett, Rick Faye, guys like that, it's all down from that trickle down from Dan Inosanto, because, you know, if you're going to follow a man, follow a great man. You know?
Yeah, right.
But there's not many of them. We're gonna wrap up on this because I want to get you again. I want to get you, if possible, because I'd like to just do musings where me and you just talk about life, the universe, anything, right? But I'm going to go out on the Gavin Mulholland quote where we interacted this week on Facebook, and I said, "Where's the honor and integrity in martial arts?" And the legend that Gavin is, he went, "It don't exist in martial arts, mate." He goes, "It don't exist." But it's like the thing is, I still believe in all of that, and maybe I'm deluding myself. But
no, you can put it in, Mick, but it has to start with you, because it's not external. It's not there as a thing. You could put it in.
Yeah, but
it's down to us to put it in if there's anything there. But it's not based on the name. Karate is a the foundation of karate is basically racist and definitely xenophobic. You know, it used to be called, it was called Tode, right? It was called China Hand. It was in the run up to Japan invading China. They didn't want any positive association with China, so they changed it to empty because it looked and sounded the same. You know, there's no bold, great of ethical underpinning to the name. They just were about to attack China.
And dear viewers, the reason why I actually do love Gavin Mulholland is he's a more erudite and eloquent version of me. He just turned around and said karate is xenophobic and racist and has got away with it. People would go, "I totally agree with you, Gavin." Where it was, but they were like, "That Mick Tully, what is he on about now?" But Gavin, it's been wonderful talking to you. It's so nice to speak to a like-minded individual. It's like, as Will always says, all we want to do is, we're in this to, you know, when you're speaking to someone and you come out of it and you go, "I actually learned something there." You know, it's like stuff that really affects you, especially as you get older. You know, we need to start exploring the real good topics. You know what I'm saying?
Anytime, Mick. My pleasure. Anytime.
God bless.
You're welcome.
Thanks, man.
Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.